I'm not going to say I'm the best reader ever, but this is one of the best books ever. Originally published as For Samuel, F-O-U-R, and now redone to have it re-edited and done through a different publisher, is now the Calo Chronicles, Book 1, Hunted. And I hope that you purchase it off of Amazon or wherever else you can purchase your books from, so you can read along. But otherwise, if not, you can just press play and listen to me read. So we're going to start off right from the beginning. Chapter 1, Hostile Intentions. Just as many times before, Samuel found himself wandering toward the ocean. The sunset lit up the scattered clouds in a disarray of vibrant colors. Many memories filled his mind as he started down the dirt path leading toward the shore. Looking out over the ocean, he found his mind wandering back to his days as a young sea captain. At times, it seemed like a dream, hazy at best. At other times, it seemed as clear as the Caribbean Ocean on a calm, sunny day. He walked along the shore until he reached the spot where his rowboat had been hidden in the shrubbery. He took it out and pushed it into the water, paddling until he was in clear view of what he was looking for. At 75, his strength was not what it used to be. He could feel his muscles beginning to burn from the work it took to paddle. He rested a moment before continuing onward. He looked out at his destination, a rock some distance from the shore. Every 5 minutes or so, the waves would rise high above the height of the rock, then come crashing down upon it like a giant hammer. As he rested, he thought of his wife. It had been years since he had last seen her or held her in his arms, time only heightening the loneliness he felt without her. He sighed with longing, then picking up his oars, moved on. After arriving at his destination, he found climbing onto the rock to be a more difficult task than he had anticipated. Having achieved his goal, he watched as the last bit of sunlight slipped below the horizon. He took in a deep breath as the ocean spray wet his face. He licked the salt from his lips as the wave rose high above his head, and with outstretched arms was buried in the ocean. Moving on to another scene. Inez sat in her garden in Lisbon, Portugal, watching the sun dip below the ocean's view. The breeze blew the scent of lavender into the warmth of the evening air, bringing back memories of when she and her husband Samuel planted them the first year of their marriage. Startled by the sudden touch of a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder, she jumped slightly. Without taking her eyes off the ocean, she knew it was her son, David. She took hold of his hand and brought it to her lips, kissing it gently before placing it back on her shoulder, where she momentarily rested her cheek. "It's beautiful here, isn't it?" she commented. "They're just as beautiful in Boston," stated David. Inez smiled to herself, knowing what was on his mind. "Can we talk?" he asked politely. He sat down next to her on the bench and took a deep breath. "My business has grown and is doing really well in Boston. Mama, you would love it there. I could build you your own home." He could see the wall she put up before even finishing his thought. She was already shaking her head. "I would take good care of you," he finished. "Oh, David," she began in a sympathetic tone as she patted his knee. "This is my home, and I am very well taken care of here." "I just don't want you to be so far away," he insisted. "I'm not the one who moved," she reminded him. He pursed his lips to avoid saying anything he would regret, as the memory of their heated separation rose to the surface. He had accompanied his father on a routine trip, but a storm had blown them off course to Ireland, where he had met and married Kate. When his new bride did not meet his mother's approval, she disowned him. It was only when they had sent word that they were having their first child, Samuel, who they had named for his father, that she decided to forgive them. It had been 16 years since his son was born, and he still struggled with feelings of resentment towards her. However, this was not about wanting to keep the family close. This was about keeping them safe. He had to protect her from his mistakes, the consequences of which he feared she would become a victim. "It's not safe here," he stated. She gave him a quizzical look, at which he responded, The economy has been suffering for a long time. There are a lot of people here that are living in poverty, and with King John in Brazil, there's bound to be war. To his annoyance, she chuckled. I have seen my share of war and hard times. I have made it through on my own, she assured him. David became stern. Mama, don't be so stubborn. Even the king left Portugal. To his surprise, she snapped, and he will return. In her obdurate manner, she turned back toward the ocean as if at any moment her husband's ship would appear on the horizon, and she could turn to her son and tell him she had been right all along. Seeing through her facade, he understood. She was not referring to the king at all. Mama, David began cautiously, you know Papa's not coming home, right? He's always returned, she insisted. No matter how long the journey, he's always returned. Her voice trailed off into an unconvincing whisper. They were taken from their thoughts when Isa, their maid, interrupted. Sorry to bother you, sir. There's a man here to see you, she informed him in her timid way. Who is it? Asked David curiously, as he had not been expecting any guest. He called himself a benefactor, but declined giving me his name. David tensed. Here it was, his past already at the door. Please guide him to my office, he instructed. Isa nodded, then left. Come on, stubborn old woman, he teased as he helped his mother to her feet. As you wish, nag, she teased back, taking him by the arm he offered. Despite the frequent tension and headbutting, they loved each other. He wanted to protect her, without letting her know what he had done. Watching them go, David's youngest child, Bia, exclaimed, Yes! From behind the rock she and Samuel, David's oldest, had been hiding behind. Shh! They might hear you, chided Samuel. Bia went quiet, but still grinned broadly. Her green eyes lit up as she held tightly to the kitten she had found, certain her parents would disapprove. They waited until they were alone in the garden before coming out of hiding. Samuel lifted Bia over the rock, her auburn curls bouncing around her shoulders as she moved. She was light and easy to lift, like their other siblings. He wondered what it would be like to be light and thin, something he had not been in a long time. They snuck around the estate to her bedroom window, where he again lifted her with her kitten inside her room. Thank you, she whispered, reaching out and rubbing his bright red hair playfully. Stop that, he complained, at which she giggled, seeing the playful look in his bright blue eyes. I'll meet you inside. He then ran to the front of the house to enter. Where have you been? His grandmother demanded the moment he walked in. I lost track of time, he explained, not wanting to give Bia's little secret away. You know better than to be out after sunset, she reprimanded him. Ines had managed to keep her son and his family safe from the horrors she had been exposed to growing up, through her strict, unrelenting rules and expectations. She had no intentions of letting up now, even if they did not know why, and resented her for it. Your tutor Zeffirino stopped by, his mother Kate, who had been sitting close, informed him. She brushed a lock of her blonde hair away from her forehead. He was looking to change the schedule around, she told him, to keep her mother-in-law from berating her son further, as she knew, if let to it, Ines could get carried away. Did he say why? Asked Samuel, grateful for the change in subject. Unexpected business, I guess. He didn't say, Kate answered, her bright green eyes putting him at ease, as they always did. Ma'am, interrupted Isa, addressing Ines. What is it? She demanded curtly. Isa stuttered, having become flustered by the tone with which she was greeted. Well, out with it, demanded Ines irritably. Rosa has a question in the kitchen, Isa managed to say, sounding as though she were now trying to catch her breath. Samuel couldn't help but feel sorry for her, and couldn't figure out why she was so timid. Where is Bia? Asked Kate. Bia peered around the corner, and when she had caught his attention, she put a finger to her lips to remind him to keep her secret. She came in a while ago, he answered, confidently, having already determined how he would answer this question. Kate looked at him with a raised brow, making him less convinced about his response. Despite his self-doubt, he insisted, It's true. She shook her head, incredulous. Hi, Mama, said Bia innocently, strolling into the room. She looked between the two suspiciously. Go get cleaned up for supper, she finally instructed, and tell Baven and Emery to stop eavesdropping on your father. They left the room, excited by the idea of joining their siblings. "That's not an invitation for you to join them either," she called after them. "How does she know?" Samuel whispered. In her still, tender voice, she responded, "We're predictable." He smiled at her, amused by her simple yet true response. Just as Kate assumed, they had found their 14-year-old sister, Baven, and their 13-year-old brother, Emery, listening in at the office door. Emery's untamed blonde hair sticking up as if he had just gotten out of bed. "Your hair is in my face," Emery complained, moving Baven's honey brown hair out of the way. "Well, I didn't ask you to stick your face in it," she whispered. "Hear anything?" asked Samuel in a hushed tone. "Something about Papa needing to keep his side of the deal," answered Emery. "And Father said he had never made a deal like that," added Baven. From the other side of the door, they could hear David shout, "Get out, Lobo!" They jumped away from the door in time for it to open. A man, somewhere in his late 30s, entered the hall, unfazed. His clothes, though clean and pressed, were simple. His hair was short, neatly combed, and it was obvious by his weather-worn skin and muscular build that he was accustomed to hard labor. Judging by the scar across the lower part of his jaw, Samuel figured he must have had a hard life. "You have a debt to pay, and whether I collect or someone else, it will be paid," warned Lobo. He turned to leave, pausing when he saw Samuel standing in the hall. His eyes brightened, looking pleased. Turning back to David, he commented, "He's gotten taller since I saw him last." "Your business here is done. Leave now," growled David, breathing heavily as he attempted to keep his cool. Lobo returned his attention back to Samuel, smiling as he met his gaze. His eyes were like that of a hungry predator, ready to devour its prey. He winked at Samuel before slowly walking away, leaving him to shudder at the encounter. "Samuel, get in my office," ordered David. "The rest of you, go to your rooms until dinner." "Papa," whined Bia. Seeing the stern look in their father's eyes, Baven quickly grabbed her by the shoulders and escorted her away, knowing this was not the time to try his patience. "Come, Bia. We need to get cleaned up." Pouting, Bia followed. Having heard the commotion, Ines entered the hall. "Who was that?" she inquired. "No one," he responded curtly. A business associate," he stated dismissively. "Come, Samuel." Once inside, he closed the door behind them. Samuel took a seat, feeling uncomfortable, knowing he would be held responsible for his siblings. "I know you were eavesdropping. What did you hear?" he demanded. Samuel had to let go of all the air he had been holding back since he walked into the office before he could respond. "Something about you needing to keep your end of the deal," he answered. "Is that all?" "That's all," he insisted. David's shoulders dropped to a more relaxed position, seeming to be satisfied with the response. "I will discipline anyone I catch eavesdropping the next time," he warned. "I will not be lenient in the future. Make sure that you let your siblings know that." "I will," he agreed. A knock at the door took the attention from Samuel, something he was grateful for. "What is it?" called David through the closed door. "Emilio is here to see you," Issa softly responded. David's mood visibly lightened. "Send him in," he instructed. "Samuel!" Emilio exclaimed excitedly when he saw him. He pulled him into a bear hug that fast turned into a headlock. Samuel slammed him up against the door in his attempt to break free. "Hey!" scolded David. "Sorry, boss," apologized Emilio as he and Samuel pulled apart laughing. "He is in trouble and is on his way to his room," David informed him, still stern. "I'll catch you later," Emilio called after him. Samuel paused at the entrance to his room when he noticed his window. He had left it closed, and it was now open, and the blankets on his bed were slightly tousled. Knowing he was not alone in here, he looked around until a small noise in his closet confirmed it. He opened it cautiously, standing off to the side, giving him the chance to jump out of the way of his would-be attackers. We're ending on this one, page 8 for now, and I'll pick up recording again later, and we'll keep reading. Thanks.